the New York Times #1 bestseller called The Rise of ISIS, A Threat We Cannot Ignore. He is a senior writer for the National Review. David French, welcome to Big 550 KTRS.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
You are going to be speaking today at Washington University at 5:30 on the university campus. To find out more, go to showmeinstitute.org, but it's at 5:30, and the talk is going to be on free speech on college campuses.
That's right.
Well, we can only hope that they shut you down so you can't say what you want to say while talking about free speech on a college campus.
I mean, I think that won't happen. I'm pretty sure that won't happen, but
Right.
you can't be sure anymore.
It's a really interesting topic you're bringing up on a college campus, because who would have thought that in 2017 college campuses would be the place where they discriminate and shout down people who have difference of opinions on college campuses.
Yeah, it seems counterintuitive. You think a college campus is the marketplace of ideas, but honestly, this has been building for a long time. I mean, we've got a situation where about half of college campuses now have speech codes in place that prohibit constitutionally protected speech. And then we've got an epidemic of these shout-downs going on. I mean, we even had at William and Mary last week, we had a shout-down where protesters shouted down the ACLU, accusing the ACLU of white supremacy. So this is how far it's gone.
Yeah.
It's not just liberal and conservative anymore. Often it's progressive versus progressive.
Yeah. There was a videotape a couple of years ago. I'm sure you saw it. If not, there was a professor on campus of Yale University.
Yes, the Christakis incident, yes.
This professor was trying to explain to the protesters, I defend your right to free speech, even though I disagree with it. And the Yale student didn't grasp that concept.
Oh, not only did they not grasp it, they got in his face. They're screaming at him, yelling at him, demanding that he leave the university. And the triggering incident for this, and this is something that a lot of people don't realize, the reason they were so angry is that professor's wife, who also worked at the university, had sent out an email saying, we need to stop policing people's Halloween costumes. Adults can wear what they want to wear for Halloween. And that triggered that kind of mob mentality. Again, screaming, demanding that he be fired and demanding that he leave. And not only did Yale not really back the professor, it actually ended up giving awards to some of the people who got in his face.
Yeah.
So it's a backwards situation on campus.
But free speech today, David French, who is with the National Review, and again, you're going to give a speech on university campus. It's free and open to the public, right? 5:30 to find out more, showmeinstitute.org. It will be packed. It will be raucous. I'm sure you'll have some shout down. So it sounds like an interesting thing to go to. But free speech today, right? You have players kneeling during the national anthem who are being told they're not allowed to. You have ESPN reporters who are opinion makers, make an opinion about players who are kneeling, who's now suspended. You have protesters who are upset, the protesters realize that you shouldn't protest in the middle of the street. They don't understand what the difference between, protests are. So, I mean, this free speech thing, doesn't seem anybody understands what's really going on.
We got a big free speech problem. And the free speech problem we have is we tend to think that the speech that I have, my speech is free speech, your speech is hate speech.
Right.
And we have this double standard. So to take the kneeling example, the President of the United States should not be demanding that people be fired unless they stand for the national anthem. In fact, one of the most important Supreme Court cases in American history dealt specifically with the idea of a mandatory patriotic display and said no. And that was in the middle of World War II, for crying out loud. So we have to have a civic education in this country that says the fact that somebody disagrees with me, or the fact that somebody even offends me or hurts my feelings, does not mean that they need to be silenced.
During the kneel down of the national anthem, I did a show where I said, look, I defend their right to do it, but I disagree. I would never do that.
Right.
But I defend their right to do it. And the callers, the emails, they wanted my job. How dare you? I'm going to boycott your station. The people don't understand. I can defend your right to say something and yet disagree with what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is free speech 101. And you know what? People need to chill out a little bit. I don't understand why it is so offensive to see someone else engage in an act or an expression that I disagree with.
Right.
You know, what does that mean I can't stand? Of course I can stand. Of course I could put my hand over my heart. The fact that somebody else is kneeling is irritating to people, but let's relax just a little bit.
Yeah.
So Again, we're seeing this. ESPN suspends Jamel Hill. They hired her to be an opinion maker.
Right.
That's what they hired her for.
About sports.
About sports and culture.
And she makes an opinion about sports and about an owner, and she's suspended for a week.
Right. Well, 2 weeks. And here's what you do. If you see bad speech, if you see speech you don't like,
yes,
deal it with better speech. Don't try to censor.
I yield the floor for a question to Wendy Weiss.
When you have the author of Rise of ISIS, A Threat We Can't Ignore, sitting right next to you, you have to ask 2 questions.
Okay.
Stephen Paddock, could he possibly have been radicalized, and why was ISIS surrendering yesterday en masse?
Okay. Number 1, could he have been? It's possible. Was he? Almost certainly not. There's no signs. But I will say this. It is one of the most unusual incidents, criminal incidents in American history. No clear history of mental defect, no clear criminal history,
right.
No history of radicalization, and he does this. There is so much we don't know. There's so much we don't know. And why is ISIS surrendering en masse? We saw this when I was in Iraq during the surge. Every military force in the world reaches a breaking point. Every one, because they're made up of human beings. Now with ISIS, because they're so fanatical, their breaking point is different from many military forces, but it's pretty obvious that they've reached a breaking point. And when you reach a breaking point, it has a cascading effect, and you will see more surrenders. I saw that when I was in Iraq, and Al-Qaeda in Iraq reached its breaking point during the surge. We actually had Al-Qaeda terrorists surrender to us. So that does not surprise me at all.
Where do these people go? Do they just funnel back into regular society, or they create another jihad somewhere?
Well, that's the thing. You have to wall these people off. You have to imprison them for a very long time, if not for life, because one of the reasons why ISIS rose in the first place is because the Iraqis, after the surge and after the American withdrawal, began to release a ton of captured terrorists back into the population, and they were not reformed. They had not had a change of heart.
Dave French is with us. He is a Bronze Star recipient, New York Times bestselling author, Rise of ISIS, A Threat We Cannot Ignore. You're senior fellow for the National Review, and today you are going into the Lion's Mouth on Washington University campus. 5:30, there is a talk called War of Words, Free Speech versus Tyranny on campus. To find out more, showmeinstitute.org. You are always welcome here, even if I might disagree with you from time to time.
Fantastic.
How about that, right?
Fantastic.
Thank you.